Welcome back to Radio Noir. This is Pat Dougherty here. Yeah, I gotta say that I had a pretty standard week. Nothing too fancy. Just doing a lot of solo gigs out in the suburbs, and I'll let you know when we're gonna start doing the full-fledged band thing again. But yeah, that's pretty much been it. But I should tell this story before I talk about the mundane. I just got done teaching a class in downtown St. Paul, and after I made sure the classroom was in order, I went outside, hopped on a bus, and not too many people on it, just a here or there, sprinkled some in the back, some in the front, and then this clown. And I don't mean like a peculiar looking character, I mean a clown, and a pretty rough looking one at that. I wouldn't go as far as to say like John Wayne Gacy creepy, but you know, maybe like the extra, like an extra in the background of a Tom Waits dream kind of creepy, you know, sad makeup, tattered clothing, kind of clown, crying on the outside kind of clown, and everyone's just ignoring him like it's a yeah, that's the 2:00 clown appointment. Like, I mean, be honest, people, this isn't New York City. Hell, this isn't even Minneapolis. This is St. Paul. You don't see stuff like this every day. And he's sitting there with his huge black shoes, making balloon animals, failing most of the time. And when he finally managed to make a poorly looking, you know, it was a sad looking dog, he tried to hand it to two girls in the back, and they wanted no part of it. And he was walking around the bus trying to hand this thing to various riders. But I couldn't tell if this was like a sociological or like a study in anthropology of just like how a Minnesotan and like the passive aggressive nature of Minnesotans in general, like how they would interact with something this outrageous, or what. And it was at this point where I couldn't tell if it was that or a brilliant piece of improv theater, because a punk rocker got on at the next stop and his bass strapped to his shoulder, and you know, he's struggling to get his money out. The bass falls down, and then you know, I will acknowledge I'm not exactly a normal looking guy by the status quo standards, but the clown looks at him, looks at me, and then just says, "Get a load of this clown."
He'd been looking through stained glass for far too long. The path was clear, but the fog was ever so deep.
All right, hey, we're not in the vault anymore. We have a new episode. I had a chance to sit down with a local singer-songwriter, Thomas Kivi. Really nice guy, nice and humble to talk to, and his CD Crying Child, if you haven't picked that up, I highly recommend it. I really enjoyed it. But last time I saw him was at the CD release show, and that was, you know, talking backstage at the Fine Line, you're not going to get a real conversation going. But he came over to my house, and we sat down and we had a little chat, and it was really nice. Might be a little long for your ears, but gets pretty political. I hope you enjoy it. So without further ado, here is Thomas Kivi.
He climbed, fell and crawled, he knocked on doors that were always locked.
Yeah, Thomas Kivi's in the studio today. But so last time I saw you, we were backstage at the Fine Line on your the big release. So how you been since then? I haven't seen you since.
Good. Just been playing shows here and there, and writing, working on the next thing. Really excited about I don't know, going forward, I guess. But because I think there's some touring things that are getting put into place, and I've got Paul DiMartino, my manager.
Yeah, yeah, he's great.
Yeah, so he's been helping me out a bunch, and he put that whole show together. So that was you know, really fortunate for me to have a big making an event out of it, and getting it on the current, around that time or just after.
Yeah.
My everyday life hasn't changed that much. I still work at a restaurant, and I don't have people come up to me and ask for my autograph on the street.
I don't think. Have you been recognized on the street for music?
There was an interesting scenario like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But it was way before. I mean, it was a friend of a friend who I was climbing around in Dinkytown, like going on the roofs at night.
Yeah.
And we climbed up, and there was this apartment, and we were trying to get up on the roof. It was a second-level apartment, and we were trying to climb up on the roof from there, and a person comes out, and like, what are you guys doing? And we're like, oh, we're trying to get on the roof. We just want to, hang out up there. And then this girl that was with him comes out, and it's like, what? They're like, what are your names? Because we were kind of like caught red-handed, and you're like, well... I'm like, and my friend kind of made up a name. I'm like, no, like, let's just tell him. I'm like, Thomas Kivi, and she's like, I just listened to you, like my friend's band, like, is it your cousin like knows this person? And it was like, so that was random because that was before, I mean, any sort of radio play at all.
Yeah, but that's.
But that seemed to be a good sign or something at least.
How often were you? Because me and my cellist, we urban explore. Well, we used to.
Urban exploring. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
I got to do a little more of it. I think it's been a while, but that's a pretty exceptional case. But no, you don't. I mean, I don't know. You have people. Maybe now I feel like I've went to go see a couple shows, and like at least friends of friends now know.
Yeah,
they tell them, so then it's like it's a big deal, and it's not, and it's like,
well, the community just gets smaller and smaller and smaller the more you do stuff.
Yeah.
Are you originally from here? Because I'm not.
Right. No, I grew up in Hudson, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
So right on the border, and I spent a lot of time. I mean, I'm a Twins fan.
Yeah.
But I was, technically grew up in Wisconsin. I was born in the cities though, and lived in Forest Lake until I was like 5. Where are you from?
I'm from Philly, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it's.
Did you come out here for school originally?
Yeah, that was pretty much it, and then I never left.
Yeah.
There's something about the Twin Cities. There's a lot of like transplanting going on. So you grew up in Wisconsin, so are you pretty sensitive to what's going on?
Yeah.
Currently?
Well, yeah, and it was definitely more. It was easier to be sensitive before when.
Yeah.
Now it's in the courts, which is sort of a private like place, but before it was, the protests just grew and grew, and I was there for 3 separate days. I went down on a union bus on the second day with my mom because she started a teachers union for support staff.
Oh wow!
She works with emotionally behaviorally disturbed kids at this elementary school in Hudson that I went to, and autistic kids, and and anyhow, went on basically like a teacher's bus that was going down to protest, and then I went back a second time and a third time. But February 19th, that was the second day that I was down there. That day changed my life, I would have to say, seeing what was going on down there.
What happened? I mean, like, because I've been to my fair share of protests, specifically. The weirdest experience was the RNC protest.
Yeah, what was that? Now tell me a little bit about that, and then I'll tell you about.
Okay, well, so I lived in downtown St. Paul at the time that was going on, and there was like a lot of street musician stuff going on, and then so I got asked to do a few things with that, and then so I just hung around the day after, and it was pretty insane. The first protest I went to was right after the police wouldn't let Rage Against the Machine play.
I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, and so people spilled out, and then I don't think anything would have happened if they just would have let them play. But like all the people who were there to see Rage joined the protest that was already like permitted to assemble, which I think is weird. You have to get a permit to protest.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But so that ended with tear gas and concussion grenades, and then I read in Fox News the next day 3 pipe bombs went off, and I was just like, that's a blatant lie.
Yeah, right.
they had snipers on all the buildings,
Right.
So like if there was pipe
there wasn't
bombs,
going to be any sort of trouble like that.
And then the worst thing that happened was the final day, where all the arrests happened. My cello player again, we went there, and then it got to the point where everyone was just marching around, like almost they wanted to take on 94. Like we were in this big cacophonous angry group, and we like we're walking down and like, let's take the highway, and then everyone's just like, yeah,
let's
and then like everyone's just like, no,
that's not a good idea.
And so we're marching down University, and then the cops just like block us off, and they're like, everyone who has participated in this is under arrest, and they just fired grenades, tear gas, everything.
Yeah.
Horses were like in full gallop clubbing people.
Full gallop.
And I actually ran into a
cavalry.
horse. Yeah, like I was running for.
You ran into a horse?
I ran into a horse. My glasses fell off. I reached down to pick them up, and then this horse is right, and our shoulders collide. And then the
horse falls down.
Pretty much. But so I brush up against the horse, and the officer's like, the horse kind of rears a little bit, and the officer's like, you just assaulted an officer, come back. And I just ran, and for the rest of the night, it was like that movie, The Warriors, where like we're just trying to get back to Coney Island.
Yep.
And then we got hit up by 2 undercover cops.
Really?
And they pull up, they flash the lights. One dude with an attitude comes out. He looks at me and literally comes out and says, "Surprise, motherfuckers!" And we're like he had some, cop show energy to get out of him. And so the entire time, like, I was just sitting, because I knew they had some stupid law where if there was suspicion of terrorism, you could arrest someone for anything.
Yeah.
And so he's looking at me, like, just asking me questions like, what are you doing? He's like,
suspicious.
Yes, sir. No, sir. I just want to go home. And then the last thing he said to me was just like, we are not going to let you motherfuckers win. And that
what does that mean?
Yeah, that shook me a little bit. Yeah. And that still carried with me. And then when I heard the David Koch prank call on Scott Walker, where he said, like, have you thought about, like, inserting troublemakers into the protests? I was just like, wow, that's it's just the world just got pulled over my eyes. It's just like I bet there was a lot of that going on the RNC, because I saw a lot of unnecessary.
You think so?
I just saw too many unnecessary macings. And from what I've been reading, the protests in Madison have just been like, I think that it's just a great display of the people winning, because it seemed really peaceful and like. But I mean, what happened? I got to know.
No, it is very different from what I've understood, and from a few other people who were at the RNC thing. Yeah. Insofar as down in Madison, you have the police who are unionized and the fire department who are unionized, but you have the police there at the Capitol, and they're mostly there just to ensure the safety of the people protesting. They, even though they were exempt from the cuts that Governor Walker was going to make to the bargaining rights, they still backed the unions, the teacher unions and stuff like that.
That's great. Yeah.
So they were sort of on the side of the protesters. So that was kind of the nature of the police there. And you had people representing different unions of all types, people from the private sector coming and supporting the unions. The Green Bay Packers were in support of the unions.
Really?
They're the only state, like, they're kind of owned by the people.
Own team,
And they won the Super Bowl. It's like they don't, they're backing the unions. The Democrats leave to prevent a vote which would have inevitably led to cutting the thing, cutting the bargaining rights completely in the name of an economic state deficit that just magically sort of, appeared to be just suddenly urgent.
Yeah.
And I think that sudden urgency and need to cut it and cut rights instead of cutting expenditures is what I took issue with. But it was so peaceful down there. It was amazing. And going into the Capitol building and having the place full of people and and chants and people singing and playing songs like outside, inside, and corners of the Capitol. I slept overnight once there.
Really?
With my brother, and there's hundreds of people sleeping overnight in the Capitol, and it just I think people saw how easy it is to voice, any sort of protest.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy and it's fun, kind of and there's a sense of community, and there's a sense of almost like pride and feeling that you're standing up for something in a world where you feel like voting is really all you can do.
Yeah.
And I think there's sort of an inversion happening, at least with people who have been there or been a part of a protest, to where it's like, I don't know, and with everything that's been going on in Egypt as sort of a like inspiration for just a general democratic empowerment that I think can happen.
Yeah.
I'm glad I was able to be down there and a part of it, and to see it myself, and to then see how not just Fox News, but just in general, I feel like how even like I feel like I saw CBS News and it said state in chaos, and it's like down there it was not chaos. It was the most peaceful, like, there was no arrests. Like the first day that was really big was like the 4th or 5th day. It was the first weekend of the protests, and there's like 100,000 people there. There was maybe 1,500 Tea Partiers, or or I think the estimates was like 70 to 100,000, but like 2% of this is Tea Party, 98%. But then the papers and even the Pioneer Press, the Star Tribune, any of the big ones are going to say, I never saw anything point out the disparity between how big the groups were. It was rival protests.
Yeah.
And that's just not a very accurate picture. And then this sort of state in chaos and making sure to capture police in riot gear. And they mentioned snipers in one. It's like, I believe it, and I guess I feel a little bit safe, but I also think that's not the point, or there's no fear. I didn't feel afraid of anything, and I didn't think it was at any point like a possibly violent situation, so it was amazing just being there, and then walking down the street, going into a friend's house, looking at what the news is saying, and being like, the characterizations were so off. But I mean, I think when you get to a certain level of media coverage, they need to fit the event into a narrative that already exists, which is a political narrative of state governments with deficits and governors, presidential candidates, cover so that's kind of how it needs to be written. And anytime there's a protest, it's chaos, I guess. I don't know.
It seems like there's no room for like a nuanced opinion.
Right.
Whoever has like the loudest argument is going to get on television. And I remember were you playing protest songs down there?
I was down there. Yeah, I was playing. Yep.
Did any like news media come up to you during that point?
No, I didn't. I talked to, there was a few other people doing it. Not that many though, but, I talked to some guy who was doing a documentary, about it. And, but no, none of the, I played in front of a news van. I got a video of a couple of those songs that I played in front of, Fox News van on the that was the first big day, the 70,000 people. It was a nice day, but yeah, that's on YouTube, I guess. But no, I didn't have anybody come up and talk to me. But there's just so many people and so much going on, and I don't think the news really wanted to get in. They just wanted to stand so far away from it, because I just think they didn't understand it. Or they didn't want to understand it, and they need to be somehow a part of it, because they can't get too much into like, and that's the hard part. Like, how do you report on it, and how do you give weight to like how many people are here and making that like focusing on like the extraordinary nature of this thing, without then seeming biased.
Yeah.
And news has to be objective, absolute, and that's what's difficult. Is being more of a disciple of Hunter Thompson, or like somebody who sees that you play an essential role, and then your experience kind of informs the way you tell the story. Mm-hmm. You can't really any story that tries to just be like a fly on the wall is kind of absurd. And then you see these people come in. You see this guy from the local news come in with wearing his suit and just looking really nervous and walking up like among all these protesters, and like families, there's children, there's students, there's all these different types of people. But it's like he seems so out of place, and so like it just seems so contrived. Like, have a light on him, camera. All right, ready? Okay. It's like this is. Don't come in here with a suit. Like the way that's so it's just so abstract, I guess.
Yeah, and it doesn't exist really.
It's just its own world of news, but how its application to actually what's going on, and if people could see what they're reporting on for themselves, I think they would form different opinions. And I think people deserve the ability to like make their own judgments on it. And I think that's what's frustrating about the news, is even like just outside of Madison, if you were in Middleton or in the suburbs and you're just getting news from it, you have no idea what's going on.
Sure.
And then and then further out from there, it's even harder. But there's Democracy Now! Did a lot of coverage of it, and they reported directly from there. I think Ed Schultz was there one day, and Amy Goodman, who's the main anchor. I think they did a great job of covering Egypt and covering a lot of the stuff, and still like in Libya, Japan now. There's plenty going on in the world right now. It's a crazy time. I have to admit.
Does that ever affect your writing process? How do you write, by the way? Are you?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think oftentimes I'll just write. I mean, I just kind of will write, and whether it's a song that I'm starting to work on, or whether it's just something, some gibberish, which oftentimes it is, like some insane like gibberish, where I'm trying to get some sort of raw expression to something that I want to say. But sometimes what you want to say takes like some concerted thought, and at least my style of songwriting is very it's a lot like writing a convincing paper or something. Like, and I'm used to doing that from college and writing history and philosophy papers.
Really? What was your major in college?
Yeah, history and philosophy.
No way.
Were my majors. So I'm used to writing. I love writing. I mean, I still I kind of that's one thing. And journalism has appeared increasingly interesting to me. But I feel like songwriting is much like, it depends what kind of songs you're making. But for a folk artist, I think you're very much trying to present something and communicate something, and the more seriously you take that subject, the more thoughtfully you're going to try to explain or express this an image or a problem or suggest an answer, or that's what you do in a paper, and that's what I just think. So for me, it's like there'd be a stage where I'm just trying to get something down, trying to look at what I'm thinking, and then maybe it'll take like still like, well, what about this thing do I want to try to? What's the angle at which you enter a subject? Because there's like a subject of like, well, man, this protest or the nuclear issues in like Japan, or Libya, Afghanistan, and Iraq, where we're 3 wars that we're still like sort of in, and the whole WikiLeaks thing, and the fact that just kind of went under everybody's pissed off about it, and now everybody just kind of forgot that was a big deal.
I think it's interesting that how do people not question more and more what the government does when we live in a world where our own government wanted WikiLeaks shut down?
Right. Yeah. I think people are like confidence in government itself is not that high right now. I don't think among I think that's the part where like the Tea Partiers and people on the left, or I think just people in general are like, well, like federal level to state level, we're all cutting funding, like, and we see it in radio with like public broadcasting, and I think we all see that there's some cuts coming, and we're all like, just like, but was it our fault? Like, is it our fault what happened? Like, is this economic collapse and the bailout, was that our fault? Like, and is it the middle class and we who have to, like, bear the brunt of this recovery or whatever? I mean, I don't know what the end result or goal of it is, but, we'd all like to see, like, something we want to be a part of, like rebuilding and not just cutting. Yeah. I just don't see anything going forward. I just see people throwing crap off the ship, like trying to keep it from sinking. Like, and it's like you're bailing water and you're throwing stuff off the ship, but it's like, it's still, there's a hole in it.
Yeah. And it just, rather than, well, do we let it sink, or do we, like, why don't we just make a better ship?
Right. Make a better ship, or let's all, I mean, and I don't know, just, there's so many, I find it very hard to discuss or to simplify, because I just don't think there's any simple answers. And what's going on, like, you can blame, like people like to blame a news media more than I think is necessary, like, for building this, like, very partisan, attitudes about politics and stuff like that. But I think, I don't know, I think we need to start talking about politics and not being offended if somebody talks about and actually discussing it, not being like, damn it, this is right, and you don't.
It's fascinating, because we live in that culture where, like, as soon as a conversation like this starts, it, like, people think debate is like this healthy thing, when really it's just accusation. And it's getting to the point where, like, okay, say you actually find the person to blame.
Right.
What did that solve? Like, it's still going to be there. Like, it's still an issue that needs to be solved. But, like, now that we found the cause, what does that really do anymore? Right.
Did you see Inside Job?
No. Is that good? Is that good?
Oh, yeah. I think it'll, it's a teeth grinder, because it's about Wall Street and about the relationships of the higher ups that were in Wall Street, and the culture of deregulate, or the deregulation and the culture that sort of grew out of that. And then I don't know how that, like, giving people loans that probably shouldn't have had them, or couldn't pay them back, and then other banks investing in those, like, loans to go spend it on something else. But just a general, I don't know, it's really like an analysis. I could see it being played in a high school economics class. Like, it has, like diagrams and stuff that come up here and there. And then also just kind of linking that to, like, leadership in the White House, and how sort of, then that leadership is still there, you know, and the guy who he won best documentary, and the director came up at the Oscars, and you can YouTube it, but he's kind of like, these people committed, like, mass fraud, and they're still, like, the ones in power. And then it's funny, because the next day, like, the news will be like, oh, he took a rip at, Wall Street, or at government. It's like, that's what the whole movie's about. Like, he's trying to highlight something. Like, let's not just, like, write it off. Like, watch it and tell me what, and then try to see, like, what do you make of that? Like, and I think there's always an effort to, like, label somebody crazy or liberal or communist or conservative or something to the right too. That maybe they have, like, and I think every position has founding principles. Now, I don't know how many people are aware or, like, actually believe in those principles, and that's why they're conservative or liberal. But I think, but that's why you need to talk about it, so you can see. You can see whether you can stand for your own positions, and then and then to understand what another person's position is. And so, and this is a big country. I mean, the U.S. is as big as the whole continent of Europe, basically. And there's so many different cultures within that. And then
there's so many different cultures within here.
Cultures in America, but like we're at least try to understand ourselves as more standardized than that.
Yeah.
But I think like there is like, and maybe there's just a dissonance, with that American identity, because there's like this multiple. I mean, heck, there was a civil war 150 years ago, like in this country. Historically, that's a pretty big deal, and we're really such a young country. It's
and in the grand scheme of the universe, 150 years is not that long.
And that's
ago.
not long ago. No, we had slavery. Heck, and like civil rights, that happened like 50 years ago, and that's not to say that everything's been answered or fixed, and that's actually. It's the opposite. There's racism today worse than, and more subtle than ever. Yeah. And it's like, how do we answer for this? Like, what sort of law do you pass? What sort of, what do you teach? And it's like, I feel like that's kind of the dilemma for the modern day man is like.
Yeah, and I think it stems from, most prejudice just stems from this lack of information and fear. No one wants to talk. They just want to say, no, it's okay, and you can't say that, and you can't say that, and that's it. Racism's over, and it's just like, no, that's not the. Like you said, it's still there. It's just a lot more subtle. Yeah, and
people acknowledge. I mean, we celebrate Martin Luther King Day, and we all are familiar with the "I Have a Dream" speech, but he had some other speeches too after that, which were, if anything, I feel more representative of what he felt closer to when he was assassinated, which was speaking out against the war in Vietnam, and saying that, and kind of bemoaning the state of racism in America after, the civil rights, after the whole march and everything. I think it was like, we need to it's not just like that's it and it's over, I think. And and I think we're sort of, because it was enacted and it's been acknowledged in the government, and nobody's making too much of a fuss about it that we're aware of, like today, like then it was solved. And but
that's so creepy to me.
It is. It's a bummer. It's hard. It's really.
I just love how people just focus in on like, oh, we love Martin Luther King and that makes us okay. It's just like, you also forget how profound Malcolm X was.
Yeah, exactly.
Reading his autobiography changed my life.
Yeah, I need to read it. My brother read it and he sort of said it was pretty.
It's
pretty
great.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I think the reason he. He wasn't as marketable.
Right.
And that's when it comes down. When you have Black History Month, it's like, not that Martin Luther King wasn't one of the most important figures of like just human dignity and like the human race itself. It's just like, people want to feel safe when they're watching their reality TV shows, and you don't want to get to the hard questions.
Right.
And it's amazing how we are talking about issues we didn't even live through with the same terms we're living in today. The buzzwords, he had the best ones.
Yeah. Did you see Hype?
No.
The movie about the grunge scene and just kind of how Sub Pop and bringing certain grunge, kind of the certain really more marketable grunge artists. I think this is my understanding of it. But is that like, it kind of tells the story of the grunge scene and this very unique thing that was going on in Seattle, and people coming from out of town and coming from California coming up, but how it kind of like Sub Pop like was born there and at that time, and take like Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, like but like they just blew up, and then the scene itself came to be turned into I feel like it got so commercialized, and you had all these people coming and asking about like this as if it was something really like crazy and insane, and people like these grunge people, who are they? And it's like, what do they wear? And grunge, like the flannels came in and they started marketing.
The grunge speak hoax, right?
Yeah, they started the grunge speak hoax, like somebody just making up like as if there's a language of
some lame stain with a fuzz on is making.
Yeah, but it's you see like that, and it's still that was very powerful in our shaping of like mid 90s, early 90s, I guess, like music, and influential regardless of the hype, you would hope.
Yeah.
But there's certain bands, and even like they talked to Eddie Vedder and they talked to a couple of guys from Soundgarden about how they feel about their success, and this was done like I think it was just shortly after Kurt Cobain died, when was that?
That was, man, I
96. I'm going to throw that out there, but I have no idea if that's true.
We're going to Google it later and look like idiots when this is online.
This was actually 2007. Yeah, but they kind of are like, they acknowledge the fact that they were kind of, their successes meant giving grunge a certain image that it, like their kind of grunge, which is how we understand grunge, wasn't what was going on necessarily, like the only thing. And there were some really cool bands that just never, and they didn't get picked up because they weren't the ones that could sell the records.
Yeah, because you need something easy and simple to package. And I actually truly believe there is a movement going on right now in the cities. It's just the Twin Cities. It's not like the time of Prince. Like there isn't a Minneapolis sound anymore. Like you have great hip hop, you have really great songwriters, you got like great punk bands, there's great jazz players out here. But like you go to South by Southwest, Minnesota like sends more artists than like any other state, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah, were you down there?
No. Paul, I actually met with Paul before South by Southwest. He's just like, "So are you coming down?" And I was just like, "No." I'm like, "No. Why?" Yeah. Like, "Well, we didn't apply for any showcases." He's just like, "Just play in an unofficial one. What are you doing? Did you go?"
I was thinking I had the time set aside to maybe do it, but I didn't have the money to spend on gas to go down there. I mean, man. But it would have been fun. But did you read that? Well, I saw Vitamin was the Kanye, like in the commercialization of South by Southwest, sort of, or the.
Well, there's too many damn music festivals in this country now. Like, music festivals used to have like a message. Now it's just like
they're
Gatorade,
sponsored.
Vitamin water. I mean, you know. Not that like Bonnaroo isn't legit or Coachella isn't legit, because they've been around for like 10 years.
Right.
It's just like they're just there to be there, like just how. I don't know.
And it's a money maker probably for the artists, and it's a money maker. You want to, otherwise those. I mean, like 10,000 Lakes Festival didn't happen last year. I don't know if it's happening this year, but like
I've heard rumors. But nothing. It'd be nice to. I'd love to play 10,000 Lakes, you know. But like, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
yeah. So it's like on the one hand, you need that sponsorship, you need the advertisement. Otherwise, you just need to do it like all pro bono and like just put in a bunch of work for no money. And a lot of people can do a certain amount of that. Like,
what's becoming quickly that the advertisement is like now the art itself. And how do you get around that? I talked to someone about this. They're like, I'm glad disco exists. Because when I was growing up, disco just basically created punk because everyone was that annoyed. And I think with the way pop music is, I think we're going to see some sort of new counter movement. But they move so fast because of the internet. Like, I mean, like it used to be like these movements were like 15 years long. Now they're like 5 years long.
Like 5 months or something. one album, and that's like that was the movement right there. Like you think about Bon Iver's record, for Emma, and how that kind of like to some comes out of left field and is really an astoundingly uniquely produced, and just the aesthetic of the whole album is very complete and beautiful, and then the story that goes with it to whether that's exactly it or not. Like it definitely helped, build that mystique and myth about the origins of this thing. It's but where do you go from there? Now I think he's releasing a new one in June, which I'm really excited to hear.
I don't think he's doing. I think Volcano Choir's done, and he's gonna go back to Bon Iver's his main deal. I'm excited to hear it. There's just a lot of stuff going on. I can't keep track of it because I also have to like go into the studio myself and do things. Are you working on a new record, or are you just gonna tour on Crying Child?
Well, we haven't really even toured much. I think there's something in May, just some small regional, like maybe going down to Chicago, Iowa. I think maybe come fall, I maybe have a longer tour, maybe going out east. Because we did the radio promotion thing with Substance, which is a place based out of California, and also Vitriol. Okay, so we had two I guess companies or whatever that were helping get it out there. So it's on a bunch of college radio. It's on a bunch of like current level radio stations across the country. So ideally, I'd like to get out there, and we're working with. I think we're looking to work with a certain. It's not set yet, but I'm pretty sure it's a certain booking agency that's going to help us with a few gigs, and Paul's doing work trying to land like some of the bigger ones here and there. And
that dude works so hard.
Yeah, I know.
Every time I talk to Paul, I'm just like, man, I'm not doing anything.
Well, he's and he's driven, and it's interesting how things have come together. I mean, I'm writing. I wanna get recording. Like if I'm not gonna be touring, I want to start recording. Exactly. Yeah. And I know Johnny who produced the record. I know he's busy with other stuff.
He's actually the stuff he's really doing is like happening in this house. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's working with my roommate John Peters.
Oh, I know John. Yeah.
So like I've actually been hearing, which is that's hilarious.
The yoga stuff.
Yeah. That's hilarious how small the world is.
Yeah.
Like you know, like one person. I'm convinced that like anyone I talk to in this city, like we're gonna find someone like you just didn't know we actually knew through the
through the grapevine, a very short grapevine.
Does Paul know Kevin Bacon?
Yeah, right. Let me see here. Yeah, through his aunt that's like visiting. Like, yeah.
I bet we could actually
connect to Kevin Bacon.
To Kevin Bacon. Let's see. What is it? Paul works with Communist Daughter, who covered the Beatles, who were in a soundtrack with
Kevin Bacon was playing
some movie that was. I don't know.
Kevin Bacon. Apollo 13. Something through there.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I think he was in Apollo 13.
I think he was. There has to be a Beatles song in there somewhere. There's a lot.
There was. Well, that was. Well, maybe I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to think of the soundtrack of Apollo 13. I wonder if anybody could name a song off it. Because part of me thinks there's like probably not the Beatles, but some sort of like
the Spirit,
music.
Yeah, Spirit in the Sky was on there. I remember that. And then there was a lot of bands.
Right, so this late like 60s, early 70s, maybe. I'm trying to remember when Apollo 13 was. This is another trivia question. What year?
I remember seeing it in the theater with like my...
No, but what year was that whole... when it actually happened?
Oh, the moon landing?
No, but that's not the moon landing. Apollo 13.
Oh, yeah, that's
When is Apollo 13? When did that happen?
Well, the moon landing was 69. Was it 71?
So it must have been... Yeah, part of me thinks 71, but... Also another estimate.
Yeah. This is what the internet does. There's guesstimations, and then you pick up your phone, and then
you know instantly,
and then you forget instantly.
Yep. It's amazing. No, the internet's changed things. I mean, that's just kind of it's changing music. It's changing the way that people promote, how you advertise. It's changing how people get together. It's changing how people communicate. It's changing like a lot of like essential things. How you record has come to fit that. And so technologically, and how much more like personal recording can become, because you don't need to go to a certain label or certain, like, you can record your own thing in a cabin like Bonnie Bear did and make something that's really successful. And that's like the amazing part about this music today.
What needs to be happening. And I think people should be doing that anyway, and not think about the end result.
Right.
And what happens after that, who knows?
Right.
Hey, thanks for coming.
No problem.
You know, I realized we talked for a while, but it was good to catch up and chat. And let me know when you're playing in the future. I'd like to come see you.
Okay, and we're back. So there it is. New episode for you. Did you like it? I know I did. Stay tuned. There's going to be a lot more coming. And I mentioned about future full-fledged band gigs. We got a mini-series at the Nomad coming up, and there's some pretty great artists on the bill. We got the Fontanelles one week, we got Lucy Michelle one week, we got the Broken Bicycles one week. Hey, maybe Thomas Kivi will be on a week. You never know. But check that out, and hey, check out Thomas Kivi too. He's playing the Nomad April 21st, so go out and support your local scene. Want to thank Thomas Kivi for coming on the program. Hope we can do it again sometime, and as always, I want to thank all you listeners out there. Please keep in touch.
Those weren't the good old days when she hopped that bus to Milwaukee. Young sons and daughters.